Okay, let's welcome in the newest general manager, the 18th in Leaf history, Brad Treliving. Tree, first of all, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it, and congratulations. And have you had a chance to catch your breath?
Well, first of all, thanks, Kyper. Thanks for having me on, Justin. It's been we've been on the treadmill pretty good here today, so that's to be expected. But it's exciting. It's an exciting day. I know you hear it a lot, and you guys are in the market a lot, but I think it's a special job. It's a special team. It's a special spot. So yeah, it's been exciting, but we're ready to go.
All right, listen, I'm going to apologize for whatever we say in the next year because this show will probably be one of your worst nightmares.
No.
Yeah.
But
I'm already starting to twitch.
It sounded in the press conference today that you know exactly what you're getting yourself into.
You know what, Kyper? I think you work in Canada. I'll put it this way: I remember going to working in Arizona, and when I interviewed in Calgary, you know, we're all young and dumb, and we're still dumb, but a little older now. But you think you have all the answers. I know what I'm in for. I've never worked in Canada, but I know what it's all about. But it's like anything else. Until you put the shoes on and you lived it, you don't know. So. Listen, I enjoyed the time in Calgary. I know, it's Canada, it's the spotlight, and this is no disrespect to anywhere, but this is different. It's bigger, it's brighter, it's more eyes, and I get it. I always think until you've done it, you haven't done it. I have an anticipation and expectation that I think I know what it's about, but until you've done it, you haven't. But I'm going in with my eyes wide open.
Well, congratulations from me as well, Brad. It's exciting day for you and your family for sure, and appreciate you joining us. I just wanted to get your thoughts on, as an outsider coming into the Leafs now, do you see the Leafs as cup contenders? Where have you seen them, as someone on the outside about to take over the role, making the decisions?
Well, in the last couple of years, for sure. I'm going into the playoffs this year. I thought, they're in that group of teams. The way the league is right now, so if you really break down the teams, and Kyper, you go back to when you played. I know that we're dating ourselves here, and that's a long time ago. But you go into the playoffs, and there's probably back in those days, there's everybody gives it the company line that we got a chance, and we're gonna this, that, and the other. I mean, at the end of the day, there's 4 or 5 teams that probably are going to win. Are going to win it. To this year, when you go into, just see when the 16 teams started to play, you can make a case that anybody could win the cup. Now, you don't build your team just to say, I want a chance to be one of the 16, and if the moon and the stars align, we have a chance. But there is some randomness, there is some luck, there is some of those things in our game. But at the end of the day, going into the last couple of years, I put the Leafs into a whatever that group is, call it 5, call it 6, call it 7 teams that in my mind were legitimate cup teams. Now, that doesn't mean they're perfect teams. That doesn't mean they don't have holes. That doesn't mean, you go through the 82 game marathon. You need a whole bunch of stuff, luck and health and top players to be top players and surprises and all those types of things and goaltending. But I look at that. It's a long way of answering, Justin. Yeah, they're an elite team. Now, as we sit here today on whatever day it is, June, close, if not June 1, but close to it, there's some question marks in terms of UFAs, people that are contracted or not contracted for next year. So, but that group of players, that core group of players, and where this team finished off, it's a really good team, but there's areas that we got to address.
Today you talked about being on the clock. There's no question that Leaf Nation will not rest until Austin Matthews has a new contract. You mentioned today getting out and seeing Austin. Is that ticket booked for tonight?
We're working on it. That's going to be we're working on it. There's a lot. I hate when I say, this is a priority, that's a priority, because it makes other things or other people think that they're not, and that's not the case. But let's just be frank. Austin's at the top of the list here. We've got to go out, and there's a process that you have to go through it. It's not walking in and and jumping into a negotiation. It's to me, you have to get to know people. We've gone through a change here in terms of the manager position. A player is going to have questions, but more than anything else, they want to know. They want to know who they're working with. They want to know who, what the thought is, what kind of person they are, and that. So as much as it's me getting to know Austin, it's Austin getting to know and getting comfortable with myself. And yeah, we know what the clock is. We're not gonna sit here and say, okay, we're going tomorrow and we need an answer by Tuesday. This is a process. And at the end of the day, he's contracted for next year. We understand fully in terms of how that contract works and trade protection and all those marvelous things and when they kick in. But we're gonna chew on the elephant one bite at a time here. And number one is to go out there, visit with them, spend some time and get to know each other.
We're talking to Brad Treliving, Toronto Maple Leafs' newest general manager. Brad, it was 11 months ago. You went through two scenarios with Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk. One, you could read the tea leaves where Johnny Gaudreau's situation might have been heading, and then Matthews Tkachuk really comes out of left field for a lot of people that saw the process sped up here. Can you draw from those two experiences to help you manage Austin Matthews' situation this time now?
100%. And what I mean by that, Kyper, is, I said it today and maybe wasn't, I thought about it after, maybe it wasn't too clear. Anything that we go through, you guys in your jobs there, anything you go through is an experience and you learn from it, right? And you may do the same thing next time, you may do something different, but you've been through it, right? And it's like a team going through, we hear it all the teams learning lessons, they're getting experience. Well, it's only an experience. I always say, if you learn something from it and apply it. Now, that is not, and I repeat, that is not to say that, because something happened with those players there, that we've got to do something completely different here, right? So the analogy is, I trade, we traded for this player and it didn't work out, so we'll never trade for another player again. We learned our experience. No. You learn through that process of how it went. I think, it's certainly in Matthew's case, it was a little unique. I'm very close to the player. I said all along, I said at the time, I repeated it again today. I didn't want to trade Matthew Tkachuk. Like, I know, we're watching in Florida that, Jesus, who's the genius that decided that they wanted to all of a sudden make a 25-year-old player expendable? That's not the case. Matthew made a decision. We had to react on the decision. We looked and made an organizational decision internally that, where our team was at. And in that case, quite frankly, and this is not to make excuses, I felt like I was holding a 2 and a 3 at the card table playing against everybody with pocket kings here. There was a select number of teams involved. They knew the process. They knew the situation. We felt we wanted to look at an opportunity that keeps our team in the competitive window. And what I would say is I love Matthew. I think he's a phenomenal player. But this story, that's chapter one of it. The players that came from Florida to Calgary are good players. I know we'll see how this thing all plays itself out, but you certainly learn from the experience. It's not to say you're going to do something completely different the next time, but you're more equipped your second time around.
Brad, when you look at this Leafs roster, and I know it's only natural for people to look at a team and say, God, if they just had a little bit of this or a little bit of that, it might make all the difference for them. Is there a direction you'd like to give the Leafs a bump in terms of stylistic play?
You know what, Justin? We're going to look at that. I think it's a little early. I've always said, there's an outside lens and an inside lens. I certainly have some views. Now, so if you look at those views and you say, listen, we've got a tremendous amount of skill, and as much as we can get frustrated and say, well, gosh darn it, didn't work. Getting top players is the hardest thing to do in this game, right? Yeah. You can, so we can all sit here and say, well, gee, something's got to change. You always look at it, and you're trying to make yourself better, but be very, very careful to say, we're going to take good players and move them out of town because it's going to be different. Different isn't necessarily better. So I look at our team, as we sit here today, we've got lots of skill. I think there's lots of talent. How do we, can we look at our depth? Can we look at, is there things to augment our team to how we look at it? How do we approach different situations? Can we have a team that can handle anything that's thrown at us? I feel in the playoffs, you got to be able to play in a number of different ways and be able to engage and not just accept, but be proactive in putting your game against an opponent and be able to handle different styles of play. And do we look at our defense, and is there ways that we can augment that? So I think we got to get behind the curtain a little bit, get to know the individuals, get to know what our staff thinks here. But what excites me is, in a lot of ways, just look where these players were picked. It's hard to get good players. It's hard to get top talent, and now you have to find a way to support it while looking at the entire roster and say, okay, here's where we are. How can we push this thing forward?
The one thing over the last few years, Brad, and I know we got to let you go here soon, but have you watched enough of the Leafs from afar to say, guys, you're just not tough enough in the playoffs? Look at the two finalists here in Vegas and Florida, and they pound teams. They're physical, and it just seems that one element has not been there over the last few years. And can you, regardless of what happens with your salary cap, can you just find more people that kind of play like a Tkachuk and a Bennett or some of the heavier players on Vegas? It's easier said than done, but can you feel like you got to turn this thing into a playoff-looking team?
Well, as I said earlier, Kyper, there's different styles in the playoffs, right? Like sometimes you need certain things to get you to the playoffs and get you through the regular season, and then there might be things that you need to get through the playoffs. Those two players there, and I know them real well. We drafted Sam 4th overall, and we drafted Matthew 6th overall. You guys are familiar with our teams in Calgary. We felt that we could not just respond, but initiate physical challenge. And that's not that. People sometimes take that and say, oh, we're going back. What that is, and to me, playing a heavier game and competing heavier, that's puck battles. That's winning space at the front of the net. That's to me, as much as our game changes and there's different, and speed and skill are paramount in our game, this time of the year, I feel the two most important areas, and it has been for a long time, is at the front of both nets. And, at the end of the day, you're trying to get to mine. How am I going to keep you from it? I'm trying to get you to yours. How can you keep me from it? So those are things that, we got to find, and we got to look for ways that we can augment our team. And sometimes that's not necessarily just all of a sudden airlifting people in. It's getting people to adjust how they play, getting people to make sure that we're getting inside, making sure that, our puck battles is an area that is of highest priority. Is how do we check? We don't defend, we check. We're, to me, there's a difference. You're on your toes, you're aggressive, but certainly at this time of year, we know what it's like in the regular season. A guy may finish his check every you're playing 82 games, you're in back-to-backs, you're 3 and 4. There's no flybys in the playoffs. There's no let-ups, and we got to make sure that we've got a roster that can handle whatever the game may present.
Could you tell us how many years you signed for? And I'm only asking you because I want to keep Elliot Friedman from going through your garbage later tonight.
Yeah, that's the closest I've been to Elliot in a while. Geez, it's frightening. I'm going to keep that. I'm going to keep you guessing on that one.
Okay.
I'm going to keep you guessing on that one, Kyper. But,
all right.
We've been looked after.
Brad, wish you all the best. Thank you for joining us.
I appreciate it, guys. Good talking with you.